Hey everybody, my name is Andy Weens and welcome to Alumni Spotlight. Each 2 weeks we actually interview some of our alumni from the program of South Coast Counseling and Beginnings Treatment Centers, and this week I am so pleased to introduce Andrew Cuomo. He is a former client and he's actually a current alumni and a current employee of South Coast Counseling, much like my own story. Andrew, introduce yourself.
My name is Andrew Cuomo, and I went through beginnings treatment, coming up on a year next week, matter of fact.
Nice.
Yeah, so I'm pretty damn excited, man.
Wow, what's your sobriety date?
October 19th.
That's amazing, right before Halloween.
Yep.
So did that have a part to play? Like, were you like, I don't know.
Oof. Yeah, I mean, at that time I didn't really know what part of the year it was. I didn't even know if I was living on planet Earth, so probably not, no.
Oh, dang.
Yeah.
So you've had sobriety time in the past, is that right?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And so how much sobriety time have you had in the past?
At one time I had a little over 5 years.
Okay. And so, yeah, I want to start with like where you grew up and what your childhood was like and stuff, but we'll definitely get there. I want to hear about how you, what happened and how you got sober for that long, and then what happened to kind of lead you into the relapse mode. But I guess my first question is, what was your drug of choice?
Heroin.
Okay, so you weren't like a garbage can or anything like that?
No, I mean, you know, like most people, other story, it was always the drinking, a little bit of marijuana. But once I picked up heroin, that was it. I didn't use any other drug.
Okay. So prior to using the substances, what was your childhood like growing up? Just give us a little recap.
I actually had a really good childhood, not perfect. You know, I was spoiled in most ways, being that, you know, I always had food to eat, always had clothes on my back, like two very loving parents. Yeah, I had a pretty good childhood. I felt distanced from my family. I always felt different. I separated myself from my family from a very young age. And there was always a lot of turmoil in my house. I reflect back on the first detox I was ever in. I was like 21, 22, now 38. And a lady had come in to talk to us. She was dressed all nice, and very nice jewelry, and her hair done up. And I started to prejudge her. I said, "What's this lady going to teach me about addiction? She don't know what the hell she's talking about." But she said something so profound. She said that if you were standing outside on my curb looking at my house, you would say, "Man, those people really have it together." But if you were on the inside of the house looking out, you were saying to yourself, "I gotta get the hell out of here." And that's exactly how I felt. I mean, she summed up my life in a couple sentences. Yeah, there was a lot of turmoil. I grew up with 2 brothers that I haven't talked to in over 12 years. I actually saw my brother for the first time at my grandma's funeral a few weeks ago. First time in like 12 years. So, yeah, I just always felt separated. And that goes for most of my blood-related family. Yeah.
So did you separated yourself, but then you felt separated. So did one precede the other, or was it kind of your mindset of, can you pinpoint exactly why you might have done that from a young age, or?
Well, the only thing, you know, with the therapy I've been through in many years, what I've come up with is, in like my home, you weren't really, I don't want to say allowed to talk about your feelings, but talking about your feelings made you weak or incompetent, especially with 2 older brothers, taunting you, teasing you, and tantalizing you in almost every way. So I suffered from a lot of anxiety as a result because I kept everything bottled up inside of me. And I think that had a lot to do with my drug addiction as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think it was both ways. You know, I love my family, but even now I feel very distanced from them because I don't feel the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Isn't it interesting that we all think that everybody else's life looks perfect and that ours is the only one? Because I felt that too, so it's interesting to talk to other people who have felt the same way. And
Sure.
we all think the grass is greener on the other side, but inside a lot of the times there is dysfunction. So it's cool when all that actually comes out, but in childhood you're kind of just like, nobody talks about it because everybody's so worried about being perfect.
Sure.
But it's interesting. So when did drugs start getting involved?
When I was about 11 or 12 years old, there was a gentleman, I don't want to mention any names, but he was a state trooper, and he had been suspended on some charges. And most drug users and alcoholics, you know, I've worked in many different treatment centers, and I'll just say this for this reason alone, is that I've always known this about myself, and people told me I have a very big heart, and I'm willing to do everything for everybody else and not take care of myself first. Something I'm trying to get better at. But this gentleman had a family, a young girl and a wife. I became very close to them, and while he was suspended from work, I was helping him, working for him for free, and I felt like he was an older brother to me. And he introduced me to steroids when I was 11 or 12 years old. That's the first drug that I've ever taken, steroids.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, people can actually overdose on steroids. I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
But if you do too many, you probably know this, but if you do too many cycles in one short period of time, you can die. And so that was crazy to kind of discover that. But a lot of people, I think, do excuse it, but it's still sticking needles, even if it's in your butt cheek, right?
Yeah. You know, fast forward 12 years, I got into bodybuilding very heavily, and going back on not feeling part of and distance and not being able to confront my life, I used the weights as an escape. Looking back on it, was very similar to a drug.
Right.
So that's, if there was fighting and stuff going on, I would either go to the gym or down in the basement, and I would work out for 2-3 hours a day, every day, every single day of the week. 12 years after I started, I had a heart attack in Guatemala City.
After you started the steroids?
Yeah. I mean, it was on and off, you know, of doing here, and yeah, I overdid it, just like I do with most everything else in my life. And I was in Centro Medico in Guatemala City for over 2.5 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah.
So if you hadn't have done the steroids, you don't think you would have had a heart attack?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No.
So from the steroids into heroin, was that, you know, when did that happen, and what was the gradual decline?
I really remember when full-fledged addiction started for me. That was October 17th, 1998. I was involved in a MVA, a motor vehicle accident. Me and 6 or 7 of my friends did some acid. I got into a car wreck and broke most of my body, leading me to be hospitalized for about 4 or 5 months. And at that time, my parents were going through a divorce. I also sustained a very bad head injury. So that's really when my addiction took flight. What was affected via my head injury was my short-term thinking and decision-making were completely altered. And they were before, but now they were completely off track. So
You were in like survival mode, kind of?
yeah, I remember, like, when I got out of the hospital and I went and saw my physician, he prescribed me like somewhere in the realm of 200 and something Oxycontins, 80s, 40s, 20s, 10s. And the first Oxycontin I ever taken, it was like a relief. I felt like I had found an answer to absolutely all my problems. I didn't feel any stress anymore, any anxiety, any fear, and that's really where my addiction started taking flight. Yeah.
Right. Wow. That's crazy. So, when did things begin taking a turn for the worst?
Oof. I mean, that's a very hard question to answer, though. I don't know. You know, if it started when I was 12 or when they really started taking a turn for the worse is when I discovered
The oxy.
well, no, when I discovered that drugs were the problem, right? They were a big problem. And I realized that I was an addict. And I even hate saying that. That really perturbs me. But it's true, man. I can't handle substances in any form. When I discovered that, and every time I kept going back, I would try to rationalize in my own head, knowing what was going on. So, yeah, I mean, and for me, every day I think about the self-imprisonment that I went through. That's the worst thing to me, knowing that something's got a hold of me. I absolutely hate it. So, yeah.
So you grew up, felt kind of isolated, started working out in the gym a lot. Steroids became your first, drug of choice, and then you ended up getting in a car accident, and that was, how old were you during that time?
I was 18.
You were 18.
Senior year in high school.
Okay, so you were already doing the workout thing a lot, and then you ended up getting your short-term and long-term memory messed up, or
yeah, my short-term and decision making.
Okay, so that was like the first major, like, could have been maybe a halt in your path, or in your case, it ended up leading you even further down, maybe a spiral, or causing you to discover the oxys for the first time, right?
Sure.
And so then, from that point, you ended up, like we all do, we kind of start off with pills, and then pills get too expensive. I don't know if that was the case with you, but then I ended up turning to heroin because the pills were too expensive. So is that kind of, how did you get into needles and stuff? Oh, you were already doing the steroids, but...
Yeah. About 4 or 5 years into my Oxycontin addiction, it had grown so wild. Once again, I try to keep tight-lipped about things like this. And
tight-lipped?
Yeah, I mean about who I was seeing and all that.
Okay.
But my doctor, he was a pretty prestigious man, and his family was very well accomplished via the government. But it got to a point, my mother actually worked in medical records, so she had the Bible of sorts when it came to medication. So I would walk into my doctor and tell him what to prescribe me. And it went from anything that I wanted. I mean, absolutely, okay. Including steroids and liquid cocaine and morphine. Needles weren't a problem. I started off on, 160 Oxycontins, 160 milligrams, down to 10 milligrams. So,
so you're in your 20s?
Yeah, I was in my early 20s, and my doctor had come into some problems because he was overprescribing some people. So one day I went in and there was a note on the door saying we're no longer prescribing pain medication. And probably it was pretty weird because a week before that, a friend of mine came over with heroin. He came over with a gram of heroin, and I did that probably a little bit under 2 hours. And because my tolerance was so high from Oxycontin, I said, let's go get some more. But there was absolutely no thinking about stopping. I had to keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
So that's pretty much what happened. Then I just cycled into a horrid heroin addiction.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the reason I ask these sometimes hard questions, especially for audience members, if you are not an addict, is just because people who might be watching and you are an addict, you know, it's important to kind of be able to relate to Andrew. And it's something that sometimes only people who have done it can understand. But so we would definitely like to open it up for any audience participation. If anyone, family members, or you're watching and you just want to comment, we would love to, since we're live right now, answer any questions that you guys may have. So we just definitely encourage the audience participation. So Andrew, how long did that last before the turning point kind of happened the first time when you had the 5 years sober? So you talked a little bit about things taking a turn for the worst.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to talk about maybe prior to that, I mean, we kind of have covered a little bit the incomprehensible demoralization, but I kind of want to know about the turning point, but then prior up to that, if you had anything really happen that was like caused you to really get sober the first time for those 5 years. I'd love to hear that.
I mean, there was a lot of in between, you know, so you figure from 20 to 29, and people always ask me, I can't give an honest answer because I have absolutely no idea how many rehabs and detoxifications and even psych units I've been in as a result. I mean, the number's pretty high. I think the first time I ever considered, I was with a girl, you know, we had plans on getting married and we lived together. First time I ever thought about getting high was during my first lockup. I got locked up in northern Philadelphia. And my girlfriend presented me with...
You're sober at this point, or no?
No, I was using heroin.
Oh, so you're locked up still.
Yeah, but yeah, so she had a sister growing up that was a heroin addict. She was a little bit older than her, as well as a prostitute. So her and her family had been drugged through the mud for many years. And after that lockup, she said, "Listen, man, you know, I love you more than anything in this world, but if you use heroin again, I'm going." And sure enough, I did, and she left.
Oh, that's hard.
Yeah. So she left, and that's when I really gave it my first honest attempt to stop using drugs. And I was like 21 or 22 at that time.
And you had been in and out of the rehabs, the jails, the this, the that.
Yeah.
Prior to this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, I have some experience with jail. I've been locked up like 8 or 9 times, but I've never done any serious time.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Andrew also has a background with, I guess, being on national news. I mean, prior to us talking, he's like, "I got this. I've been on national news like 12 times." So that's freaking awesome. And I asked him how, and he said to talk about drug addiction. So during this time of Andrew, I don't want to tell the story, but getting sober for these 5 years, he actually started talking to a bunch of people advocating for abstinence in schools and all that good stuff. So that's amazing. And so Andrew, how did you kind of get into that when you got sober?
I ended up in a treatment center in Oklahoma. And one of the positions was drug education. And I remember I've had a few dreams, and 3 dreams that I can remember as far back as 4, 5, 6 years old. One of my dreams took place in 2nd grade. That's where it originated. I saw a speech by Martin Luther King. So I knew I wanted to do that, and I always kept that in my head. I just never knew I was going to be... I didn't know what I was going to be talking about. It just came to fruition, and it ended up I started talking about drug addiction. So I spent like 5 or 6 years crisscrossing the country, mostly speaking to kids K through 12, sometimes colleges and nurses, and Rotary clubs, but mostly kids. And that's where I have my clean and sober time. You know, the reason why that failed, and I was thinking I knew this question was going to be presented. one of the major reasons it failed is I wasn't really taking care of myself. I was spending a lot of my time and a lot of my energy, all my energy as a matter of fact, in others, and not allowing any time to take care of myself, self-care. And ultimately, man, I failed as a result. And,
wow.
Yeah.
So did you find that profession, or did that profession find you when you got sober?
I wasn't really looking for it. I guess I was, because it was always in my mind that that's what I was going to do. And most people thought I was nuts when I used to say that, especially in most cases drug-induced. Tell people, hey, and they're like, okay, be the same thing as telling someone to become an astronaut. Yeah, we believe you. So,
oh my God.
Yeah, but it turned out, it was awesome, man. I loved it, and that's probably my favorite thing in the whole world still today is helping others and watching them succeed. Nothing gives me more satisfaction.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So in the beginning, were you taking care of yourself and then it declined?
Yeah. Once again, I was gifted because I had to come up with a defense mechanism early on and make relationships with people and almost create my own family. So I would sit back and watch. I would watch a lot of people and how they acted, their mannerisms and how they talked to people and the things that they did and their happiness. And that volleyed into me learning how to meet the right kinds of people. And I did. I even in Oklahoma, I surrounded myself. One of them still my mentor today. Somebody that's very, very important to me. He's probably the most successful person I've ever met in my life. Started off in the same position that I was in. But I was fortunate enough to be able to surround myself with people that were going to help me. And still today. It's hard to find the right people, but once you do find them, I just stay close to them, man. I believe if you surround yourself with people that win, you're going to win.
Wow.
I mean, it's simplistic but not easy,
And I also think that, if you stay the course long enough, those people will find you.
Sure.
I think that, my higher power blesses me when I've stayed the course and done it, even when it was uncomfortable or painful or whatever the case is. Eventually, those type of winners, like, they'll help you succeed too. And
Sure.
I can speak for myself for that too. So, inevitably you weren't taking care of yourself. You ended up putting other people before yourself, and then that's what led to your relapse after those 5 years.
Yeah, I mean that and relationships. I went back to a couple of relationships, and it wasn't all them. It was me too.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to take care of myself. Bowie's right into it. I know how to love other people. I know how to take care of them and try my best to make them happy. And in the end, I'm not happy. So.
Right. Mm-hmm. And I think everybody has those. I didn't realize I had codependent, because that's exactly what that is, like tendencies, until I got into sobriety and realizing that that's a pattern, and learning how to kind of unlearn that and learn how to not live for other people, pleasing other people.
Sure.
It's difficult, but it can be done, hopefully,
Yeah.
right? I'm not fully there yet, but I'm getting there. So, this last time, I want to know what part beginnings treatment centers played in your sobriety this last time. What caused you to ask for help, and then what advice? Well, I'll ask the other part later. Yeah, we'll start there.
this time around, well, I went to work for, actually, I was in a treatment center in Georgia. I left Georgia. I went back to my mom's house. My mom I have a good relationship with. It's about the only one blood related. I love my mom to death. I try to work on a better relationship. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm trying my best. And my stepfather, I went back to her house after 6 months of a treatment center out in Georgia. My mom will give me like 1 or 2 days to stay in her house, and that's it. Like, all right, go on. So I left Georgia. I left Pennsylvania from my mom's house with a couple $100 in my pocket. I made it down to Nashville, Tennessee, with like 20, 30 bucks. I had a job interview. I didn't know if I was getting hired, but it was pretty much, I don't mean to seem obtuse, but I pretty much said that I'm working here, whether you like it or not. I ended up getting hired. I did really well financially. I found a place within 2 weeks downtown Nashville. It was absolutely freaking gorgeous. I got involved in a relationship again, not knowing how to be in a relationship, and I lost control. That's essentially what happened. Thank God my little brother, who I choose to call my little brother, was with me. It helped me through that. But I was, at the time too, I was mentoring someone by the name of Louie. His mom kept asking me, hey, can you watch out for my son? Can you watch out for my son? And at the time, I wasn't in the greatest space to do that, but I agree because I'm a little afraid of his mom. She's a very powerful woman. And I took on that, and it was taxing because he was younger than me, and I tried to give him everything I had, but I didn't have too much to give him, like emotionally. He ended up moving out of me and my little brother's house, and he OD'd a couple days later. At that point, I lost control, man. I lost control of myself. I lost control of my mind. And I remember I was in my apartment, and I was leaned against the wall. I had no defense at this time. And the only 2 things that were running through my head were either blowing my brains out or using drugs. Mm-hmm. And I used drugs. So I got in my car. I drove out to a good friend of mine out in Connecticut. I spent a couple months out there. I couldn't get it together. I was using drugs out in Hartford. I drove back to Pennsylvania, and I told my mom what was going on. I still had my place in Nashville, and I left Pennsylvania to go back to Nashville. Now I knew that I needed help, so I flew out the first time to Pasadena. I went to a treatment center out there. I left there. I came back home. I returned back out here for sober living. About 5 or 6 days into my stay, one of my best friends died of an overdose.
You were in California at this point?
Yeah, I was living in Pasadena, Altadena. So I flew back home for his funeral. I was on my way back, and I said, I'm not going back. So I relapsed again. And I spent like the next few months crisscrossing the country. And I ended up back in Nashville. And I was tore up. I was devastated, man. I couldn't pull it together. And somehow, some way, I had nothing to do with it, man. God intervened in my life. I don't really remember even how I got here. I know there were some helping hands.
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, it almost seems like a blur. But I ended up here. I didn't know too much about this place. And I'm really glad that I made that decision because I had done probably 20-something NA, AA programs. And before that, I'd swore it off. I said, I'm not going to another place that offers that kind of treatment. Now, mind you, I've been through, I'm pretty sure every type of treatment you can go through, be it scientific, or I've been to Buddhist colonies, Christian programs. NA was just, I didn't think it was going to help me. NA, AA, and it turned out the right fit. You know, God's got a real weird sense of humor, so I did end up back here. And what I love most about Beginnings is, number one, the person that runs it. You know, he's actually one of my heroes, man. He inspires me every day. Fortunate enough to get spend some time with him here and there. And it's just like my mentor. My mentor used to ask me, "What the hell are you? Why are you always watching it? What's wrong with you?" I want to watch what he's doing, man. I want to watch how he reacts to situations just to make me better. So, in Beginnings it's a family unit, man. You know, it's something I needed. I discovered a little while back, man, that the reason why I relapsed time and time again was a disconnection of love. Somewhere along the way, I'm becoming disconnected. In this place, man, there's a lot of love here, man. You know, as well as you, Andy, became a family member. You know? So I don't know where we're at. I don't even know what's going on anymore.
That's incredible. It definitely is a family.
Yeah.
That's for sure. So I'm super happy that you work for us now too. And I feel like God gave you a shot just as well as He gave me one to carry you not just through treatment, but to help you and myself afterwards, because a lot of the times it's like, okay, treatment, now what? And I feel like we do a pretty good job of giving people opportunities to continue their sobriety and help them in any way that we can. So that's great. What would you say to an addict who may be suffering, who would be watching this right now? What's one piece of advice you could give?
Whew. You surrender.
That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, especially when you're out there using. Like I most of the time wasn't hearing, nor was I listening to anybody, because I just didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to stop using drugs.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, life, man. It's hard. It's amazing that I'm saying this, but it's awesome, man.
And it's crazy because the surrender thing, it's like we hold on till our last breath sometimes.
Yeah.
And really, surrendering gives us everything we wanted. It's like life stops going against the grain for us so much. It stopped being bad luck after bad luck, bad run, and unfortunate circumstance. I mean, it's not that we don't have hard times, but it's like life starts to open up, and it's crazy that we just hold on to this sense of control with every last it. And I mean, I'll speak for myself, but I also know people who are doing that too right now, and I did that, and they're still out there, So,
sure.
Yeah. You agree with
Yeah.
the surrender? Yeah, that's huge.
I mean, when I arrived here, I weird because I heard somebody say this. I just put my hand up and I said, whatever. Like, whatever. Don't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I left a lot of, again, I left pretty much everything I accumulated in my life for the past 2.5, 3 years. Just left it behind. Most people are like, whatever. When I thought about it, if I go back and try to get it, am I going to make it back?
Mm-hmm.
So that's the surrender to me. It doesn't matter, man. And I feel like more rich now than most any time in my life. it's for me, the greatest gift that I have is when I lay my head down on the pillow, I can go right to sleep. I mean, today, who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? I got no idea. But today, I wouldn't trade that for anything. Absolutely not.
Peace.
Yeah.
That's huge, yeah. Okay, so what part does AA and your higher power play in your sobriety? And then we have pretty much one more question and we'll be done, but I totally want to hear that from you.
What part does AA play?
And your higher power.
And my higher power?
Yeah.
Alright, so, I mean, AA plays a big part. Most every morning, or Monday through Friday, that's how I start my day.
You went from anti-AA to pro-AA.
Yeah, and you know, I'm not gonna sit up here and claim that, you know, I'm this big, you know, I know every part of literature and I know every quote and everything that's going on, but there's sometimes like I come across a line. I did a men's stag this morning, and something that struck out to me. I've read it 100 times. It said that if business owners don't take inventory of their store, they're probably going to close down, right? Then I thought about myself. If I don't constantly review what's going on and how I make myself better, then the quality of my life's going to suck. Mm-hmm. And also, some of the people that I see every day in the meeting, you know, they're quite a bit older than me, and just their experience in life, man, it's like, it's awesome. You know, they've lived their life for 25, 30 years without drugs and alcohol, and they love their lives. So I have like beacons all around me, knowing that, hey man, life's okay without drugs and alcohol. My higher power, I think that plays the biggest part. I'm fortunate enough where I never questioned my higher power. I always knew who my higher power was. Now I find myself, before I do something, I pray, not after, right? So that just helps me tremendously. I'm very grateful. I'm very thankful for everything in my life, every situation. I love them. I wish I could give more of it. Right now, it's... Yeah.
No, that's, yes, 100%. Okay. So, we're pretty much done. I guess the last question I have for you, Andrew, is, I mean, now you're working for us. That's amazing. You know, you have your future ahead of you. Where do you're grateful for where you are now, you know? So that's already a huge accomplishment. You're coming up on a year sober. So these are all huge things even to be happening before you even have reached a year. It's greatness. So where do you see yourself in 5 years?
On a boat as much as possible. That's really, I mean, that's an honest answer. It's like one of the things, I love being on the ocean, I always have. That's something I get to do every once in a while now. So that's my last dream, to own a boat and travel. So if not 5 years, definitely inside of 10.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, Mohammed is asking, how is it like working in a treatment center, a sober living? How did that affect your life in general? And how did it affect your recovery? That's huge. Thanks, Mo. Love that question. Mo's amazing.
Hey, Mo, what's happening with it? So, let's go slow here. I'm a slow reader. How is it like working in treatment, sober living? I think it's phenomenal. At this stage in my life, I get just as much help out of people as hopefully they get out of me. It's just a constant learning experience. I thought about this the other day, right? I thought about what a sober living is to me. Well, sober living is where people are sober. But I'm going to go a little bit further. How many places can we actually go where people are sober? I can't think of many homes I can go into where there's not at least alcohol. So that keeps my mind away from, hey, if I'm going through something, even though I probably won't do it today, but even the thought of it being there sometimes messes me up. So, let me see. Mm-hmm. How did that affect your life in general, and how did that affect your recovery?
You know what? I know for a fact Mo wants to work in recovery.
Yeah.
So that's probably part of the goal of him asking that. How did that affect? Yeah. Knowing that.
I mean, the only thing I can say is I'm happy that I'm sitting here. So I guess the effect it had on me was pretty profound. It's if you can do it, I would definitely suggest doing it. For me, it is a time thing too. I mean, the further I get away from drug, the less I love you too. The less I think about it. Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, cool. You get to help the guys in there probably too, huh?
Yeah. I mean, they helped me probably more than I helped them, for sure.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Sweet. Well, Andrew, it's been such a pleasure, and I always have gotten along with you really well.
Yeah.
And just liked you as a person, so I'm that's why I asked you to come on the show, and I feel like you definitely have a story to tell, and we've had many conversations where you've helped me and given me advice, even from your 5 years of being sober. You have experience from that you are bringing with you, that's sustaining you for the long haul now that you're in it.
Sure.
Yeah, so you're amazing, and thank you so much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, okay, we have one more question. We're going to keep this thing going. No, I'm just kidding. When was your first sponsee? Okay, have you worked all 12 steps?
Yeah, I have. Be truthful, I've never had a sponsee. Yeah, never had.
You know what? I just want to say something. I didn't get my first sponsee till I was freaking 3 years sober. I felt like such an alien. I was like, everybody, like comparing myself to all these people who had like freaking sponsee moms and like just a pyramid of like sponsorship tree, all this stuff. And whatever, like I can't compare myself. That's like me going online and comparing myself to Kim Kardashian. I mean, it's pointless. Like, we all have our own journey, and I've had the pleasure of having sponsees. However, not all of them stay for a long time. Some of them can be transient. I mean, it's difficult to work with the addicted population in any setting. So that's just been my experience. I don't have any sponsees right now, but I'm open. So holla if you want to be my sponsee. But anyways, so I just wanted to share that personal experience too, because I feel like it's helpful for those people who might compare themselves and whatnot. So 3 years strong, didn't get my first sponsee till then. So anyways, yeah. Is that it?